I'm Anna, and I'm 37 years old. My life has been tied to a man much older than me, my husband, John, who is now 59. We've been married for 19 years. Nearly 2 decades together made me believe I had a stable, fulfilling home. We have two daughters. Our eldest just turned 18, and our youngest is only a year old. To me, they are the light and comfort of my life. Our family lived a simple life. John was the main breadwinner while I stayed home, managing the house and taking care of the children. I was proud of being a homemaker, not because I gave up everything, but because I truly believed I was preserving our family. My days were filled with cooking, cleaning, diaper changes, school drop-offs. But in my heart, I held on to the belief that what I did mattered, that I was helping keep the warmth alive in our home. John was a calm, quiet man. Despite our age difference, I always tried to understand him, love him, and build a life with him. I believed that even if he didn't express emotions often, his love for me and our children was steadfast and quiet. Our life wasn't always easy. The early years of our marriage were tough. Financial struggles, raising children, overcoming challenges together. But I thought enduring those years proved our love was real. I believe that when two people stay together long enough, they begin to truly understand and accept each other. But I was wrong. That seemingly peaceful life was hiding a storm I never expected. It began on an ordinary evening. After putting the baby to sleep, cleaning up, and preparing breakfast for the next day, I sat down on the couch, exhausted. Yet an unshakable unease tugged at me. Lately, John had grown irritable, distant, and avoided eye contact. He came home late, barely spoke, and clung to his phone like it was glued to his hand. A wife's intuition is never wrong. I tried to dismiss my suspicions, telling myself he was just stressed from work, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more anxious I became. One night, while he was in the shower, I picked up his phone, not to violate his privacy, but because I needed the truth. Before I could unlock it, he stepped out and saw me holding it. His face changed instantly. He snatched the phone from me and shouted, "Why are you checking my phone? You have no right." I was scared. I was shaking. But above all, I was heartbroken. The next day, I quietly checked our phone bill. One unfamiliar number appeared repeatedly, almost every single day. I decided to call it. A woman answered, calm and unapologetic. She confirmed she was John's girlfriend. She even said that if her husband ever found out, that was my problem, not hers. I was stunned. My heart shattered. I confronted John. I asked him, hurt and confused, "Is it true? Are you seeing someone else?" He screamed, telling me I was making up drama and should stay out of his business. He didn't deny it, but he didn't apologize either. That's when I knew it was all real, and the pain I'd tried to ignore had finally come to life. From then on, I started noticing every small detail. His avoidance, late-night calls, the way he clung to his phone, even in the bathroom. I didn't want to become a suspicious wife, but I needed answers. One night, he fell asleep on the couch and his phone slipped beside him. I picked it up silently. The screen was still lit. There it was, a string of messages filled with heart emojis and sweet nothings. None of them were meant for me. I quietly placed the phone back and pretended nothing happened the next morning. But something in me had broken. I later reviewed his call records again. That same unfamiliar number kept showing up, even multiple times in one evening. Trembling, I dialed it. The same woman answered. Her voice was shockingly calm, almost mocking. When I asked, "Do you know you're destroying a family?" she chuckled and replied, "That's your problem, not mine." I had hoped, foolishly, that she'd deny it or feel some remorse. But she didn't care. She was my age, had children, and a family of her own. But that didn't stop her from becoming the other woman in my story. I confronted John again. He didn't deny it, but instead of remorse, he looked me straight in the eyes and said coldly, "I'll stop when I want to. You don't get to tell me what to do." For the first time, I felt small in my own home. When a husband is caught cheating, you'd expect him to at least apologize. But John didn't. There was no regret in his voice, no remorse in his eyes, just coldness and cruelty. He said he would stop when he wanted to, as if I had no say, as if the family meant nothing. That sentence was like a blade cutting through the last bits of hope I had left. I stood there, crying silently, searching for the man I once loved, but there was nothing left except a stranger. And this wasn't the first time. 18 years ago, shortly after our first daughter was born, he had another woman. I forgave him, thinking it was a one-time mistake. But now, with our second baby still in diapers, he betrayed me again, not out of temptation, but because he thought he could. I was on maternity leave, unable to return to work. The apartment was under my name, but we both paid the mortgage. Soon, the child care allowance would end. We needed money to live, to raise our children, and John knew that. He knew I depended on him, financially, and for the role he played as a father. He used that dependence to justify doing whatever he pleased, with no consequences. He told me bluntly that if he wanted another girlfriend, he could have one. He no longer cared about my feelings or our daughters. He walked the line between duty and desire, and chose desire without a hint of guilt. That's when I realized the man I once loved was gone. I never thought I'd feel so powerless. Day after day, I lived in a cold house, not because of the weather, but because of the man I once shared everything with. After giving birth, I stayed home with the baby. With no income, I was completely financially dependent on John. He took full advantage of it, declaring he could do what he wanted. He no longer saw me as a wife, just someone too weak to leave him. I struggled every day, juggling a toddler, trying to keep the household from falling apart. But the more I tried, the more drained I became. Every time I faced John, I didn't know what I'd receive: silence, anger, or indifference that made me feel invisible. I tried talking to my older daughter. At 18, she was mature enough to understand and hurt enough to see our family falling apart. She tried speaking to her father, but John replied with rudeness. He wasn't just hurting me. He was destroying our daughter's faith in what a father should be. I was being swallowed by loneliness and financial pressure. I needed money to pay debts, to buy milk for the baby. I needed a husband. But I felt like I had nothing left. Even after the affair was exposed, John didn't change. If anything, he grew colder. He came home late without explanation. Some nights, he didn't come home at all. When I called or texted, he ignored me. I'd stay up all night, rocking our baby, filled with dread. In the morning, he'd come home and snap. I'd stop asking questions. I'm sick of being interrogated. That sentence slapped my dignity. What had I done wrong? All I wanted was to hold my family together, but he treated me like a burden, an obstacle to his freedom. One day, he said he was going on a trip. I asked, "Do you want me and the baby to come?" Even though I knew the answer. He replied coldly, "No, I want to go alone." I was silent. I knew exactly who he was going with. Then I started noticing financial problems. Our money wasn't stretching as far. When I asked, he said, "Don't worry, I've got it." But I had to worry. I checked our shared bank account and was stunned. Luxurious restaurant bills, expensive gifts, high-end shopping. None of it for me or the kids. The money was being funneled elsewhere, to the woman he loved more than his family. While I scraped for formula and diapers, he spent lavishly on his mistress. And the worst part, he felt no guilt. John, once the pillar of our family, had all but vanished. He no longer ate with us, asked about the kids, or cared about anyone but himself. When he wasn't home, he claimed to be working late. But I knew better. He didn't text. He didn't call. When he came home early in the morning, I'd ask, "Where were you?" and get shouted at, "Stop asking! I'm tired!" Even when he was home, he wasn't really there. He sat in silence, glued to his phone, avoiding everyone. No hugs, no late-night chats, not even a glance of care. Whatever we once had long died in his eyes. What hurt the most wasn't being abandoned, but watching my children break. My oldest daughter tried speaking to him, begging for understanding, but he dismissed her, sometimes with cruel words. I felt like I was carrying everything. One child too young to understand, one old enough to hurt deeply, and a husband who had simply walked away. Our family had become a hollow shell. Inside it were people barely hanging on, waiting for a miracle that would never come. As our financial struggles worsened, I had to count every penny just to buy milk, diapers, pay bills. I asked John, "Where's our money going?" He brushed me off. "Don't worry, I've got this." But I had to worry. Our daughter couldn't afford tutoring. Bills piled up, so I checked the bank account again. The truth crushed me. Fine dining bills, gift shop purchases, high-end retail transactions. These weren't places we ever visited. They were for her, his mistress. The perfumes, the expensive dinners, they weren't for our family. They were for the woman he adored more than us. I asked one last time, my voice trembling, "John, what are you doing with our money?" He said coldly, "Stay out of it. I know what I'm doing." At that moment, I knew I'd lost everything. Not just his love, but my last shred of security. We were no longer a family. It was just me and my daughters trying to survive, while he lived a glamorous life that no longer included us. Eventually, my body began to collapse under the weight of it all. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd stare at the ceiling while my baby slept beside me, unaware her world was falling apart. I grew weaker, numb, too exhausted to cry. I finally saw a doctor. He said, "You're severely exhausted. You need rest." I smiled bitterly. Rest? Where can I rest when everything is falling apart? How could I rest when my husband had a mistress and didn't even hide it? When I didn't know if I could buy formula tomorrow? When my eldest daughter, once so full of life, was now withdrawn and sad, whispering, "Why does Dad treat us this way?" I didn't have an answer. I held her tight as my heart ached. My youngest, just learning to say mama, played innocently with cheap plastic toys. She didn't know what was happening, but I worried for her future. I wanted her to have warmth, a father's love, not a house full of tears and fear. My health was failing. But worse, my spirit was slipping into a dark abyss, and I didn't know how much longer I could hold on. In my darkest moments, I thought about leaving John. The idea wasn't new, especially after sleepless nights, insults, and silent tears. I confided in my best friend. She looked at me and said, "Anna, maybe you should leave. You can't live like this forever." I stayed silent, not because I didn't want to leave, but because I didn't know where I'd go, what I'd do. I had no job, no income, 2 young kids, a mortgage. I couldn't do it all alone. I was terrified of poverty, of being alone in the world. And deep down, I still loved John, the man who once was everything to me. My family knew. They urged me to be strong. My mother held me and whispered, "Maybe John will change. Maybe he's just lost." But every time I hoped, I fell again. I looked into John's eyes and no longer saw my husband, just a stranger, walking further and further away from our life. I felt like I was standing in a dark room with no door. I didn't know how to save my family or myself. I loved him, even though he hurt me. I still wished he'd come back, look at our daughters, and realize what he was losing. I don't know if that day will ever come, but every morning, I still hope. Just a little. Even the faintest flicker of light in the dark, I try to hold on. Because if I let go, everything will fall apart. And I'm not ready to lose it all.